Mouse journaling number 4, outset. Okay, so the Zygen relative to the outset is characterized by basically feeling just as wide at the hump and at the front, but not being tilted. And as a result, what changes, oh, and it's lower. So your thumb, ring, and pinky are more in danger of dragging on the pad. You have to keep kind of lifting them a little bit. And as a result of how low the rear is and how it changes the angle of your hand, instead of just kind of the outside edge of your palm rubbing on the pad, it's actually the whole bottom of your palm, this whole kind of U shape down here. So you actually get increased friction on the pad from your hand, not the mouse. So the outset is better in that it frees up the glide a little bit more. And because it's a taller mouse, it lets you kind of get up on top of it a little bit more easily to fine adjust pressure on the pad versus weight on top of the mouse into the pad. So you have more options. Clicks are softer for the stiffness of the switch, and they have more post travel, which is nice. These are really pleasant clicks, generally speaking. I just don't like how hollow the right click sounds, and there's some button wobble and weird flex on that one. But that's because I was an idiot and tried to trim too much of the plastic on the internal skeleton, so oops. Side buttons are great, honestly. They sit right on top of where my thumb is, and I can hit both of them just by rolling my knuckle. That's fantastic. Coating on the sides gets a little bit slick sometimes, especially if my hands are even slightly greasy. It doesn't feel that matte or grippy almost. Neither of these coatings feel very matte, actually, surprisingly. But I do like the texture on the buttons. And the scroll wheel is a little bit less stiff than the Zygen. So it's a little bit easier to live with. But then the scroll click is, it's about the same. Okay, never mind. So what are the drawbacks to this mouse? Because the hump is quite wide and kind of almost flat, it fills up your palm more. You can't really kind of curl your hand around it. It definitely pushes the sides of your hand outward. And because it keeps your hand flat like that, when you push it forward, the distance you have to go to free up the mouse to micro adjust just with your fingers is very small. So that's probably very good. But compared to the Gladius, it's not as comfortable when it's pulled all the way in. It doesn't give you as much freedom in the angle of your wrist. And it's wider at the front because it doesn't have this very aggressive trim for the ring finger placement, which means I don't feel quite as accurate. I've found myself really liking mice with narrow front ends to offset a nice wide hump that can be freed up really easily. So you go from having a very supportive mouse, you can close your hand around and then get a very kind of pointed, accurate feel at the front, to freeing it up and then having something that is, again, a very pointed, accurate fingertip mouse. The outset, because it's got that wider hump, I keep my hands wider, which kind of pulls my thumb back. And then I have a more aggressive flex on this joint. And as a result, it's not as easy as I'd like it to be to roll my thumb to trigger these buttons. Or the mouse starts to get pinched in here, in between the meat of my thumb and my index knuckle, because of this flare, and the hump gets pinched right in there, like the M4, where I'm kind of sitting on top of it. And it doesn't feel good because it's harder to free up. So I end up wanting the pincer claw to lift my whole hand this way, and then it you can see it helps roll and straighten my thumb out, and then that gives me decent access to the buttons again. But at that point, they start to feel a little bit low, and I actually prefer the slightly higher buttons on the Gladius. So again, 10 grams to get wireless and other functionalities, and to lose this Vaxee cable that, to be honest, I really don't like. Yeah, it's a great mouse. If you can get one used for under 60 bucks, honestly, yeah, it's very good. I think as a compromise of comfort and gaming performance, it's probably better than the Zygen. Weirdly, I almost feel like the Zygen's more comfortable and better suited to games where stability and grip, kind of control over the mouse, is more important. So I think this is the CSGO mouse of the lineup, whereas this is more almost the Apex mouse of the lineup. I don't know. Could be wrong, but that's my gut feeling about it. Yeah. And then meanwhile, the Gladius just is a bit big and heavy for Apex, but it's a fascinating shape that I don't know really, due to the weight of the triggers, the tendency to accidentally click while fingers are relaxing towards the front, catching on that lip. I don't know that it'd be that great for CS, but it's kind of a do-everything mouse. Hard to beat, super comfy, and light enough for me for most games. Alright, anyway, so yeah, Outset to me is really, really good. Just not quite good enough to justify keeping it when I've already got the Gladius. And the Zygen is also really good, but it doesn't really conform to my current idea of how I want to be able to grip and ungrip my mice. If I were still at a point where I was like, I want my mice to be locked in completely and have a really good control over them, and feel really comfortable and very planted on top of my mouse while using them, this would be great. But that is not kind of the archetype that I'm looking for right now. Which is probably going to be a shame, because I bet I would appreciate that mouse quite a lot at a different point in time. And then the Orochi just surprises me with how good it is. Especially for the price I paid for it. 50 bucks. Hard to beat this thing. So yeah, out of my lineup, comfort mouse, casual gaming mouse, more serious gaming mouse, but also the one that I throw in a backpack and beat up and don't really care about because it was less expensive and just seems to be a bit, I don't know, it's less vulnerable, I guess, to stuff than this mouse might be. But part of that was I had those optical switches in here that were way too lightweight to get thrown in a backpack. You hear them clicking as you walked around because they're that unstiff. Whereas the Kales and in the smaller mouse with the shorter triggers, yeah, you don't have to worry about that so much. All right,